Okay, today I'm going to show you what I call the dip drop stitch. Dip drop stitch. I'm not really sure if there's like a technical term for this stitch, but in my head, when I'm creating my pattern, I call this dip drop, and for me that works. So in the pattern, when it calls for you to do the dip drop, let's say I'm at the pattern, the next stitch is the dip drop. It's going to tell you how many to dip, and in this particular pattern it's calling for you to dip 2 stitches below. And so what that means is, here's the stitch that's on my needle, this is 1 stitch below, and this is the 2nd stitch below. So you'll take your right hand needle and stick it into the 2nd stitch below, so into the center of that stitch, okay, and then behind you're going to go ahead and wrap around as if to knit. You'll pull it through, so you're pulling it through that 2nd stitch, and you want to give it some slack. You want to go ahead and make it nice and loose to really pull up on that. And then the drop part happens, and that means you're going to drop this stitch. You'll just drop it off the needle. Now you're not going to lose this stitch. It will get caught, if I just sort of undo everything, it gets caught by when you did the dip. See that? So let's do that one more time. You're knitting, and the pattern calls for you to do the dip drop. It's going to say dip 2 stitches below. This is the stitch on the needle. 1 stitch below is this stitch. 2 stitches below. Insert your needle into the middle, knit, pull it through. Oops, sorry about that. Give yourself some slack, make it nice and loose, and then drop this stitch. And you can just carry on knitting, and when you get to the end, that first stitch I went ahead and sort of, pulled it down, but it will, you don't have to do that, of course, when you get to the end of your row, you'll see, and then as you knit, this will just sort itself out, and then you get this nice pulled up stitch. So you want to make sure that when you're dipping that in and you're pulling this stitch out, this one here, that you give it enough slack. You don't want it to be too tight. Otherwise it doesn't, you don't really notice it then. So you really want it to be nice and loose. So that was the first one I did and the second one. And that is the dip drop stitch.